The alarm screamed, lights flashed, panic at the apartment complex like a storm. People rushed out in a blur, doors slammed, footsteps thundered. A family of 3 pushed forward, struggling against the frantic crowd. The mother kept a tight grip on her son's hand. The father led the way, shoulders hunched, clutching a duffel bag packed with their most precious belongings. "Stay close," the mother shouted over the noise, her voice sharp with fear. Her grip on her child's hand was ironclad as she scanned the corridor for a path through the panicked crowd. In the chaos, amidst a sea of fleeing residents, one figure stood still. His attire, a red-striped shirt and a whimsical beanie, made him stick out like a sore thumb. His calm was unsettling, his eyes hidden behind round glasses, scanning the crowd with an eerie detachment. No one looked at him in their panic. No one except... The little boy tugged at her mother's hand, pointing. "Mom, why isn't he scared?" Before the mother could muster a response, the alarm choked off as abruptly as it had started, and a voice washed over the PA system, its tone unnervingly calm.
"False alarm. Please return to your apartments."
Relief washed over the crowd in a visible wave. "Let's head back," the father said, his voice still carrying an edge of unease. As the river of people reversed its flow, the family of 3 turned back towards their apartment. The little boy glanced over his shoulder, searching for the oddly dressed man, but the man in the stripes was gone. Unbeknownst to the boy, a strange wave began to ripple quietly across the wall behind him. Silent and stealthy, this undulating shadow trailed the unsuspecting family down the dimly lit hallway, following them all the way to their doorstep. Once the family of 3 was back inside their apartment, the door clicked shut with a solid thunk. The little boy immediately went to the window, his little face smushed up against the glass, his eyes scanning the empty street below for any hint of the striped oddity. But the figure he was looking for was not in the empty street down below.
"What are you looking at, darling?"
His mother's voice pierced the silence, sharp and sudden, snapping him back to the room. Sounds of clanging pots and the rhythmic chopping of vegetables filled the kitchen as his mother busied herself with dinner. The domestic noises clashed eerily with the boy's rising tension. Slowly, the boy turned away from the window, his heart still racing.
"In the hallway, I thought I saw..."
His voice trailed off, still distracted by the images swirling in his head.
"Go wash up for dinner, honey,"
his mother instructed, brandishing a spoon with a flourish, as if to shoo away his lingering fears. Obediently, the boy slugged off to the bathroom, the image of the peculiar striped man still spinning in his mind.
"Make sure to wash those hands like a good boy would,"
his mother demanded from the kitchen. The little boy sighed deeply.
"Yes, Mama,"
he replied, his shoulders slumping with defeat. Even if he told her, or even his dad, what he had seen in the hallway, it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't believe him. Not in a million years. The little boy proceeded to roll up his sleeves and twisted open the faucet. Water crashed into the basin, a mini cascade echoing in the tiled room. As he lathered his hands, meticulously scrubbing between each finger like a good boy should, something eerie began to unfold just behind him. The bathroom wall, usually so plain and inert, started to warble. It pulsed subtly, the paint and plaster undulating like the surface of a disturbed pond. But the boy, absorbed in the serious task of washing the germs from his hands, remained oblivious to the wall's strange ballet. Turning off the tap, he reached for the towel. The wall behind him was now more liquid than solid. It was then that a soft, chilling whoosh filled the air, a sound far too sinister to be wind. From the rippling wall, the striped man emerged, materializing silently. He stood there, a ghastly figure with empty eye sockets that stared unblinkingly at the small boy's back. As the boy dried his hands, his gaze remained fixed on the mundane task, unaware of the menacing entity just inches away from him. Just as the striped man took a step towards the boy, with a final swipe of the towel, the boy flicked off the bathroom light, plunging the room into darkness. The mirror's reflection blinked out, the striped man's ghostly image swallowed by the sudden night. Oblivious to the close brush with danger, the boy skipped back to the kitchen, to warmth and laughter and light. He sat himself down at the kitchen table, pulled out his notebook, and began to draw. His crayon skated across the paper, tracing the outlines of the striped man he had seen. His parents, meanwhile, continued their culinary dance in the kitchen, chopping and stirring and seasoning, creating a symphony of scents that filled the air. They were too wrapped up in the task at hand to notice the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the way the air seemed to hold its breath, waiting. As the boy added the final touches to his crayon creation, unbeknownst to anyone in the room, that same strange warbling wave crawled along the floorboards like a serpent, circling around the family. The boy's parents laughed over a shared joke, the sound a bright contrast against the creeping dread just a few feet away from them. Then, a sudden chill swept through the room. The rhythm of chopping vegetables was almost soothing, the knife in the father's hands making a consistent thud as it met the cutting board. Beside them, the wall began to move like a wet wave of water was trapped beneath its surface. A few steps away, the little boy glanced up from his drawing. His eyes widened with fear, and he clutched his crayon so hard it snapped. Paralyzed with fright, he watched as the wallpaper's pattern began to swirl hypnotically, distorting into a liquid-like flow. The boy's heart raced. Terror clutched his throat so tightly that he could barely breathe. The boy's father, still unaware of the nightmare unfolding beside him, continued chopping the vegetables. It wasn't until the boy's face drained of color, his small body stiffening in terror, that the father realized something was wrong.
Hey, you okay, bud?
He asked his son. As the striped man fully materialized beside his father, the boy's wide eyes filled with an unspeakable horror. The figure turned, its head tilting curiously, as if amused by the boy's fright. The little boy could only lift his little hand and point behind the father. Still blissfully unaware, the father casually turned around to see what his son was so terrified of. And there, standing impossibly close, was the man in the striped shirt and beanie. The father's mouth dropped open to shout, to warn, to protect, but no sound emerged. In a flash, the striped man reached out, his hands finding the father's jaw, stretching it open with a supernatural ease that defied human anatomy. The silent scream finally broke free from the boy. His piercing shriek filled the kitchen as he watched this nightmare invade his reality. The striped man turned his head slowly toward the sound, his empty eye socket seeming to stare straight into the boy's soul. The mother whirled around, her son's scream still ringing in her ears. The wooden spoon was clutched in her trembling hand, a useless weapon against what she saw. She screamed. Her husband's body was contorting violently, his limbs jerking, twisting in ways they shouldn't. And then, the striped man climbed inside him. A sickening crunch echoed through the kitchen, the sound of bones breaking, a shell cracking open. Then came the yellow liquid, thick, oozing, seeping from his mouth, dripping onto the cold kitchen floor. Panicked, she grabbed her phone to call for help, but the striped man was quicker. He slid out from the father's collapsed form, his body malleable and shifting unnaturally as he moved towards her. They tried to run. The boy bolted for his bedroom, his heart hammering, praying he could reach safety, close the door, disappear. But his mother wasn't as lucky. The striped man caught her in the hallway, his hand stretched forward, grasping, unrelenting. Her last scream echoed down the hallway as the man repeated his horrifying entrance, her body contorting unnaturally as she transformed into another ghastly puppet. In his bedroom, the little boy heard the muffled sounds of struggle and his mother's final scream. Tears streaming down his face, he crawled under his bed, his small body trembling. With the crayon he found beside his stuffed animals, he reached out and scribbled on the wall. His childish handwriting was shaky with fear. Waldo found Mommy. The boy remained hidden, too scared to move, waiting for a rescue that seemed increasingly unlikely to arrive. The boy held his breath, hoping, praying to be overlooked. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a soft, eerie, popping sound, like the air being squeezed out of the room. The boy peeked out slightly and saw the striped man materialize out of the wall right in front of his bed. Frozen with terror, the boy couldn't scream. He couldn't even move. He could only stare as the striped man stooped down, his face coming into view. Where his eyes should have been, there was nothing but smooth, pale skin, stretched taut over the hollows that should have held them. His skin was almost translucent, giving him a ghostly appearance that made the boy's heart race even faster. The striped man tilted his head, as if curious, peering at the boy under the bed. The lack of eyes made his gaze all the more unnerving, as if he were seeing in a way humans could not comprehend. His breath was a cold draft, smelling faintly of the same sickly sweet decay that emanated from the yellow liquid. The little boy pressed further back under his bed, his small body shaking uncontrollably. He knew he couldn't run, couldn't hide any longer. As the striped man reached under the bed with his arm, the boy squeezed his eyes shut. His tiny fists clutched the crayon he held, as if it could somehow protect him. That evening, a neighbor stepped out into the hallway to do some laundry. The smell hit him first, a sharp, metallic tang that made his stomach churn. Then he saw it, the mother's body, grotesquely contorted and covered in bizarre, cartoonish illustrations, lying just a few doors down. Her face, frozen in an expression of terror, was almost unrecognizable. Shocked and horrified, he stumbled backwards, fumbling for his phone to call the police. His hands shook as he explained the situation, his voice barely a whisper as he urged them to hurry. The police arrived quickly, their presence marked by the flashing lights and the low murmur of radios. They cordoned off the area, their faces set in grim lines as they took in the scene. The detailed report they filed later that night pinged the attention of the SCP Foundation, known for monitoring such anomalies. Under the guise of government health inspectors, a team of SCP agents was dispatched to the apartment. Clad in nondescript suits with badges that offered little explanation, they entered the apartment with a single goal: to investigate and contain any potential anomalous threats. The team leader signaled for silence as they stepped through the doorway, their senses on high alert. The apartment was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and their own measured breaths.
Scan everything,
the team leader whispered, nodding to the agent with the biosensor equipment. The agent nodded, moving ahead to sweep the living area, where faint traces of the yellow liquid still glistened on the walls. As they moved deeper into the apartment, another agent, the team's photographer, took careful shots of the scene. As the tech specialist scanned the area with a device designed to detect anomalous energy signatures, their eyes widened.
"It's off the charts here,"
he muttered, his eyes fixed on the readings. Whatever happened, it was highly potent. Suddenly, a soft, eerie popping sound echoed through the apartment, like the quiet burst of a bubble.
"Do you hear that?"
one of the agents asked, tilting her head. There was a faint sound, almost like breathing, but when she listened again, it was gone.
"Stay focused,"
the team leader barked, giving her a sharp look. They continued, moving toward the bedrooms. That's when the team leader felt it, a sudden chill. She turned just in time to see a figure materialize from the wall behind them. It was the man in the striped shirt and beanie, his face eerily smooth and eyeless.
"Contact!"
she shouted, her hand darting towards her weapon. But before she could draw, the man in the striped shirt was upon her. With supernatural speed, his hands reached for her face, prying her jaw open with eerie precision. He twisted his body, contorting it as he prepared to crawl inside her. Her body spasmed violently as he slid into her mouth, the sound of her bones crunching under the strain of his invasion echoing through the apartment. Her eyes, wide with terror, reflected a final glimpse of horror before her face was obscured by his entering form. The remaining agents scrambled, their shouts and commands creating a cacophony of desperation. They fired their weapons as the man emerged from the fallen agent, his form shimmering like a heat haze, bullets passing through him as if he were nothing more than a wisp of smoke.
"Fall back!"
another agent yelled, but it was too late. The man appeared suddenly from the shadows, his arms unnaturally extended to snatch and pull the agent towards him. The agent's screams were cut short as the man forced his way into his abdomen, contorting the agent's body in sickening angles as he maneuvered through him. Another agent tried to run, her footsteps thundering down the hallway, but the striped man intercepted her with horrifying fluidity, his body stretching and twisting to block her path. With a swift motion, he unhinged her jaw with his hands. Her mouth was now permanently agape in a silent scream as the striped man climbed inside. Moments later, she dropped to the floor, another grotesque puppet adorned with those macabre illustrations. The last standing agent watched in horror, unable to move. As the man in the striped shirt turned his featureless gaze upon him, the agent knew escape was impossible. In a desperate last act, the agent managed to pull out his radio, his voice trembling as he transmitted a mayday call to the command center.
My unit's been compromised.
They're all gone. The subject, he can pace through walls, take over bodies.
We need assistance ASAP. Help!
His transmission was abruptly cut off as the man in the striped shirt enveloped him, his body contorting as he entered through his mouth and exited through his pelvis, leaving behind yet another corpse marked with twisted, cartoonish figures. In the silence that followed, the apartment was a tableau of horror, each agent transformed into a grotesque testament to the man's deadly capabilities. The man in the striped shirt simply phased back into the wall, disappearing as swiftly as he had appeared. In the dimly lit room of the O5 Council's Emergency Command Center, the air was heavy with a somber tension. The council members sat around the austere table, their faces gaunt, each line etched by the night's grim revelations.
We're playing chess with a ghost,
murmured the head of the council, breaking the oppressive silence.
The time for underestimating our striped friend has long passed,
declared another council member. He cleared his throat and continued.
Henceforth, he shall be designated SCP-4885. Let this name be a reminder of our failure and our resolve.
Nods of agreement circled the table as the gravity of naming the striped man, SCP-4885, settled among them. It was a formal acknowledgement of the anomalous threat, a commitment to containing it at all costs.
We need a containment strategy that mirrors the unpredictability of SCP-4885 itself. One that's as slippery and elusive as the entity.
Another member chimed in, sparking a torrent of tactical brainstorming. The result? Procedure Inveniant Eum, a masterclass in adaptive strategy, as intricate as it was desperate.
This plan will harness chaos itself,
the chief strategist outlined, pointing to the dizzying array of flowcharts that now filled the screens.
36 Class 17 containment chambers, each a piece in a larger, mobile maze, connected not by fate, but by a cryptographically secure random dance of numbers.
The strategy was laid bare. A D-class subject, chosen for his mental resilience, would become the unwitting lure, ferried unpredictably among these chambers by an autonomous vehicle. Each chamber was rigged with a single digital monitor, its screen destined to flicker with the live coordinates of SCP-4885, information visible only to those with the highest clearance.
Keep it disoriented. Keep it chasing shadows,
the lead strategist added, her voice laced with a mix of determination and the macabre humor that had become their coping mechanism. Her eyes flicked across the room, daring anyone to counter her plan. Dispatched to the scene were agents trained for just this sort of pandemonium, a special task force with nerves of steel and not a jot of patience for supernatural antics. At the secured facility, they prepped the containment chambers, each agent moving with the precision of a well-oiled cog in a larger, desperate machine.
Check every seal, every circuit,
barked the team leader as they inspected the self-driving vehicle and its network of chambers. The D-class subject was equipped with a tracking device and briefed under heavy surveillance. The randomness of his movement through the chambers was crucial to luring SCP-4885 without falling into a predictable pattern. Then, the D-class subject was placed into the vehicle. The self-driving vehicle hummed to life, its path dictated by the unseen hand of the random number generator. The chambers lit up, one by one. This was a high-stakes game of musical chairs that none wanted to lose.
Monitors live? Let's hope our ghost likes the show,
quipped another agent as the first location data blinked onto the screen, a digital beacon in the dark. SCP-4885's location was only visible to Level 5 personnel and those directly involved in the containment effort. Hours ticked by, each passing moment stretching the tension thinner. The agents watched, their eyes flickering between screens as the D-class subject was shuttled from chamber to chamber, a pawn in their elaborate trap. Then, a flicker on a monitor, a shadow within a shadow. SCP-4885 had taken the bait. The containment chambers, scattered like pieces on a chessboard, were now conduits in a circuit of confusion, each transport adding another layer of disorientation to the entity's plight.
Looks like our ghost is getting dizzy,
muttered an agent, a smirk playing on his lips as he observed the entity's faltering movements. The final chamber locked into place, a digital fortress now holding what they hoped was an imprisoned specter. Back at the command center, the Council watched the culmination of their plan. Screens displayed the containment chamber holding steady, the location data, a constant beacon.
Is it contained?
Whispered a Council member, almost afraid to break the spell. Theoretically, replied the head of the Council, his voice dry. SCP-4885, the Foundation's own elusive version of Where's Wally, or Where's Waldo in the States. That is, if Wally had a penchant for phasing through walls and killing anyone unfortunate to spot him. Jokes aside, SCP-4885 does bear a striking resemblance to the character Where's Wally from popular children's puzzle books, characterized by its iconic red and white striped shirt and beanie. However, unlike its benign counterpart, SCP-4885 is distinguished by its paler skin and the absence of eyes, contributing to its unsettling appearance. Classified as a Keter-level anomaly, SCP-4885 poses significant containment challenges. To safeguard the specifics of its initial discovery, all related information was expunged using an automated system to prevent any unauthorized knowledge of its origins. In terms of containment measures, SCP-4885 is secured within Class 17 containment chambers. These chambers are strictly regulated, with stringent access controls. No personnel are permitted within 100 meters unless absolutely necessary, under threat of immediate amnestic treatment and termination of employment as mandated by the Ethics Committee. The management of SCP-4885 extends to its derivatives, known as SCP-4885-1 instances. These are monitored through an advanced AI system named FAR2.AIC, which has substantial access to CCTV systems, 80% coverage within the United States, and 40% globally. Should an SCP-4885-1 instance be detected, specialized Foundation drones are deployed to discreetly relocate these entities to a secure location known only as Location I, the coordinates of which are known solely to FAR2.AIC. In the scenario where Location I is compromised or its secrecy breached, emergency protocols outlined in document Paint the Town Yellow are activated. This involves the establishment of a new Location I and the unfortunate but necessary notification of death to the immediate family of the personnel involved to maintain operational secrecy. SCP-4885 exhibits dangerous capabilities, including the ability to teleport to any individual aware of its or its derivatives' locations. It can phase through solid objects and is known to attack individuals by entering through the mouth and causing fatal internal damage. This ability makes SCP-4885 not only a physical threat, but also a severe risk for information security within the Foundation. Thus, the containment of SCP-4885 requires a multifaceted approach, combining high-level security protocols, advanced technology, and strict information control to mitigate the risks associated with this unpredictable and dangerous entity. All in all, SCP-4885 and its kin demand the kind of security that makes Area 51 look like a walk in the park. So the next time you think you see Wally, maybe just pretend you didn't. After all, ignorance is bliss. Or in this case, it's just safer.